Primal terror. Chaos without structure. The Natchez Trace stretched 400 miles through wilderness, where law simply did not exist. Flatboat traders called cane tucks walked north carrying silver and gold earned downriver. They traveled alone, through forests so dense, sunlight barely touched the ground. Then bodies began appearing along the road, without warning or any explanation. Wagons were abandoned, purses emptied, and the mud was darkened with blood. Whispers spread of two brothers, moving like shadows, between scattered frontier settlements. Their names were Makaja and Wily Harpe. Makaja Harpe, called Big Harpe, was broad, relentless, and terrifyingly calm. Wily, known as Little Harpe, followed with equal cruelty and no hesitation. They did not rob with strategy or patience like ordinary thieves. They were just brutal. They killed suddenly and brutally, almost always without motive, beyond impulse. Cabins were found, silent and cold. Entire families vanished overnight, without warning. Travelers began moving in armed groups, constantly watching the tree line for any sign of movement. The Trace earned a reputation as America's most feared and lawless road. Posses formed and tracked boot prints through mud, broken brush, and shallow creeks. Gunfire echoed one dawn, when Big Harpe was finally cornered and wounded. He was captured alive, and dragged back toward the very road he and his brother had been haunting. Frontier justice was swift, merciless, and designed to send a message. His severed head was nailed to a tree beside the Trace to serve as a warning to future bandits. But if the Harpes killed for chaos alone, what would happen when crime became organized and profitable? Crime becomes enterprise. Years later, the violence along the Trace evolved into something far more calculated. Samuel Mason was not a madman, but a former Revolutionary War soldier. He understood discipline, logistics, and how to read desperate men for weakness. Along the Mississippi River bluffs stood a hideout, known as Cave-in Rock. From that cavern, Mason's gang watched river traffic drifting heavily below. Flatboats carried cargo south and cash north, with little protection. Mason often greeted travelers politely, before relieving them of everything they owned. Some victims were released, shaken, and broke, while others were never seen again. Loot was cataloged, divided carefully, and hidden with deliberate precision. Rumors spread that portions of the plunder were buried along the Trace itself. Unlike the Harpes, Mason built a network of loyal and heavily armed men. Federal authorities posted bounties as financial losses along the river increased. Inside the gang, distrust slowly began to fracture long-standing loyalties. While attempting to escape mounting pressure, Mason was ambushed by his own followers. They brought his journey to a violent end, hoping to trade his fate for the promised reward money. His severed head was delivered to authorities in a canvas bag, proof of his death. The bounty payment was denied over technical disputes and bitter arguments, and whatever treasure Mason buried before his death was never officially recovered. So who was hiding even more? Crime becomes myth. By the 1820s, outlaw legend along the Natchez Trace had evolved. Again, John A. Morrell operated not through chaos, but through calculated conspiracy. He dressed well, spoke softly, and recruited followers with careful persuasion. Rumors swirled, and described a shadow organization called the Mystic Clan. Allegedly thousands strong, this network was said to span the American South. Morrell specialized in slave-stealing schemes and forged legal documents. He allegedly planned coordinated unrest, used to mask widespread looting. Whether the conspiracy was real or exaggerated remains fiercely debated today. A young adventurer named Virgil Stewart infiltrated Morrell's inner circle. Stewart later published sensational confessions, attributed directly to Morrell himself. Southern towns erupted in paranoia and whispered fear of rebellion. Morrell was arrested and brought to trial for slave-stealing charges. He was convicted and sentenced, but not for grand conspiracy. The supposed uprising never materialized across the South. Yet stories of hidden caches, scattered along the Trace, still persisted. Gold, silver, and valuables, allegedly buried before his arrest. No authenticated cache tied directly to Morrell has ever surfaced. Historians question how much was criminal genius and how much was myth-making. Legends tend to grow stronger wherever the historical record falls silent, and the Natchez Trace still carries whispers of treasure buried beneath its soil. Some stories are true, some are myths, and some live in the space between. Like and subscribe for future expeditions.